Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of A24 on the Rocks, the podcast where we, a merry group of movie-loving misfits, take on the glorious cinematic task of reviewing every single A24 film in chronological order. We are on Season 6. How about that? And that means we're starting the 2019 year of the A24 releases. Well, we're at least into it by now. My name is Kevin K. Konkonachek, and on this episode of the podcast, we are reviewing the supernatural horror film, The Hole in the Ground. But I'm not alone. Oh no, of course not. In fact, I have even more drinking buddies than ever before. Hello, Dan and Becky. Welcome to the party and the podcast. Let's start with you. Say hello to the people and tell them what you're drinking.
Well, hello, Mr. Konachek, and hello, world, here on our second ever A24 on the Rocks. What an honor. You actually decided to have us back after the first one, so guess we didn't mess it up that much. But I am actually currently drinking water out of a giant 2-liter bottle, and it is tap water, and it is lukewarm, so there is nothing at all exciting about what I'm drinking.
Yeah, but it's from Bolivia,
to be
though.
Here.
So it's Bolivian water, so it's foreign. It makes it fun. Exotic water. Yes, exotic water. All right. Becky,
all right.
Say hi.
Dearest Becky.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Becky. I'm pretty sure I'm back just because they wanted Dan back.
Oh, no.
But I'm here.
No.
No, token female, all the way.
Oh, come now. We would never stoop that low. Never.
And I am sharing said Bolivian water. Cool. But fun fact about it, our city was the first city in the country to actually treat their water and have potable drinking water within the city. So there is something interesting there.
There you go.
Yeah, and the fact that you can drink it out of your tap is pretty great in itself. So how about that? All right. Also joining us, we have the man from Detroit, Eric. Say hi to the people.
I'm Eric, and I'm drinking a Coke Zero in a frosty mug on the rocks. I'm not drinking a alcoholic drink, but I'm still drinking a drink on the rocks. Cole, okay. What are you drinking?
Yeah, Cole, bring us home, buddy.
Hey guys, as the resident alcoholic, I am drinking.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, don't let me drink alone. I can't drink alone, so somebody else drink with me. Cole,
I'm drinking a 23 Queen Street Irish rye whiskey with cherry bitters, so fancy.
Sounds delicious. And once again, I am K-Con, and I have a stiff glass of Castle and Key Restoration, which is a Kentucky straight rye, aged 3 years, 106 proof, sort of wake you up a little bit. But I've really fallen in love with rye. I think it's probably my favorite form of whiskey, and I just, sorry, bourbon, rye is my new favorite.
A24 on the Rocks.
But anyway, let's dive into the film. The Hole in the Ground is an Ireland, Belgian, Finland co-production film. It was released in March of 2019. It was directed by Lee Cronin in his feature debut film from an original screenplay he wrote with Stephen Shields. It stars a ranging cast of Irish, Finnish, Scottish, and English actors. Mostly I can't pronounce their full names, so you're going to get that from me. And it follows a woman who begins to suspect that her son's disturbing behavior is linked to a mysterious sinkhole. Well, sounds like a pretty good plot.
I can fix that.
Oh, he's going to fix that. I'm not sure what we're fixing. Maybe the sinkhole. Probably not the lack of pronunciation on the names. Anyway, the film had its world premiere at the Sundance Festival on the 25th of January, 2019. As always, has anyone here seen or heard of this movie before watching for this podcast? No?
Nope.
Didn't think so? You didn't watch any obscure Irish film? You have?
I watched Holes first.
Cole, you've seen this film? Okay, Cole, here, take it away.
I never saw the film, but I saw the poster, and every time I saw the poster, I was like, that looks kind of cool. And then I saw the name of it, and I was like, I don't know if that sounds as cool as the poster looks. And then I never watched.
It was the creepy kid or the spider crawling on the mouth of the creepy kid that made the poster cool to you?
Well, it was the one that had him like standing with the hole in the background behind him, like of the world kind of spinning. And I always thought that was really
Getting the hole,
cool.
Murph.
I don't even know. Is that a Holes reference, Eric?
That was from Tim and Eric's bedtime stories.
He just put hole into the search engine, folks.
We got a lot of hole references
sound
tonight.
Here. All right, so Cole's the only one who had been familiar with the existence of this film beforehand. Yeah, that's about right. I famously do not like to watch trailers before reviewing these films, so I jumped into it blind. Dan and Becky, did you watch the trailer ahead of watching this?
We did watch the trailer, although to be fair, we watched the trailer a few weeks ago, so we also completely forgot what it was supposed to be about by the time we actually watched the movie.
I had one of the films, A24 films that comes at night. I watched the trailer beforehand, and it completely set me up for a certain mindset of what I thought the film was going to be, and it didn't deliver on that mindset. So ever since then, I've stopped watching trailers just because I don't want to be.
Yeah? Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, there it is. You're right. It is my opinion, and I'm the host, so I'm going to put it out there for everyone to hear. Okay, so right off the bat, we get some pretty sweet cinematography. I think we get some elevated drone shots, some flipped perspectives, some intense atmospheric music. I think this movie starts out really pretty. Eric, talk to me about the opening of this film.
Well, okay, I wrote down POV camera shot walking through the woods, and that's exactly what was going on. There is some very pretty, I guess, nature shots in here. I do think that the cinematography was decent, at least. The kid definitely reminded me of the kid from The Omen, and The Omen and this definitely, I think, have a little crossover. This haunted kid, that's definitely a thing in horror. But yeah, I think The Omen is more of the quintessential horror film for a boy being haunted, as opposed to The Exorcist, where you get a girl being haunted, right. Or possessed.
Fair enough. And we'll get to something familiar with that scene here in a second. But as the film opens, we see that Sarah's kind of battling some sort of maybe anxiety. You can just tell that something's a little bit off about her as we get introduced to her right off the bat. The opening is her and her son at the carnival, and we get a big road to hell ride kind of in the background, followed shortly by a scene featuring a yellow car driving down a rural road in the middle of nowhere. These aren't accidental, right? These placements of road to hell quickly in a horror film that you are very likely to know is going to be some sort of creepy. Did anyone else take note of just those subtle little things in the carnival right off the bat of setting kind of that aura of unsettledness and creepiness? Cole, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do a lot of foreshadowing right off the bat, and then the drone shots of the car driving through the woods and everything was very, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. The guy who did The Shining. Yep. It reminded me of The Shining.
Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah, Kubrick, where it felt like they were very ominous. I started getting like flashbacks to that and was like, yeah, wherever they end up is going to be a bad time.
Well, and it was very intentional because both cars are yellow. Both scenes are shot with an overhead camera as the car is weaving through the woods with trees on both sides. There was absolutely an intentional call to The Shining at the start of this film. And I think that part of the, kid-based horror, not that all of The Shining had it, but there's a decent part of it that's pretty historically Shining. Eric, you are a big Kubrick fan. Did you notice that as well, kind of, or did you have that reference at all when you were watching this?
No, I did not really think much of Kubrick. When I think Kubrick, I think very symmetrical shots, purposely placed production design, very bright colors, and or the colors in the film really tried to get the audience to feel what they're feeling. And I guess, okay, this is like an Irish film, and there's a lot of grim, gloomy colors in here that remind me of a cold Irish rainy day. So maybe that did get me feeling that, but no, not exactly Kubrick.
Yeah,
no.
Fair enough. The last scene I want to talk about here before we get into it is the camera does the sweet flip over to a 180, and we kind of look like the car's driving maybe into a hole or down below, perhaps into the depths of hell. Dan, did you notice this effect at all when you were watching the opening of this film, or did it kind of just fly under the radar for you?
No, actually, the entire opening of this movie, I think, did a tremendous job of setting the scene and the ambiance for the whole thing. So the sort of eagle eye view and the flip sort of going from, maybe the idea of their life before to, what their life is going to be. And I said to Becky earlier, too, I think that part of the isolation, part of the, the car being the only one on the road, they really used the setting of Ireland well. I think the sort of darkness and drabness of everything, and then that feeling of isolation, I think it worked really well to set the stage at the beginning. So for me, that was actually really attention grabbing.
Absolutely. And the next bit I want to talk about is completely a 180 perspective of that dark, drab, scary overtones. We get some banter from Chris, which is clearly meant for the audience to kind of get a perspective on his personality, but we get some comedic levity, right? We get the scene where he starts talking about Stuart Mackin, his friend at school, who's an ass face. And his mom says, no, you can't say that. He's like, well, what about anus face? It's a science word. We get, some pretty fun little moments here right off the bat. Cole, why are we including a little bit of comic levity so quickly after this heavy-handed just feeling of dark in a movie that is probably going to be dark and scary?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, I guess not divulging too much into the movie, but they set up that this kid has a specific personality and has like some unique quirks and like some like innocence and like funniness to him that later disappears and changes. And I think they really tried to focus on just the kid is going to look the same, but something is going to change and he won't be the same from that perspective. So I liked it. I thought it was funny. I enjoy the whole anus face thing. I could not stop thinking about it, especially when they showed the hole in the ground, because that's all I could think about was like, man, this is a lot of like butthole looking stuff going around here. So
More to dig one hole each day.
Oh, Lord, there's the hole.
5 foot deep, 5 foot in diameter.
Oh, my God, who gave him this power? Take it away. Eric, since you got to play a little bit of comic levity there, why don't you talk to me about this comic scene and why you think it was inserted the way it was?
I think that has a lot to do with the Yelnats family curse, and I don't think it has anything to do with, what happened at this house or the hole in the ground. I think the hole is just something that Shia LaBeouf was forced to dig.
Oh, Lord.
And no, I'm just kidding.
Not getting anything serious out of this man.
No, but the anus face problematic child, I guess it's a bit of a trope that there's sort of a problematic child in a way that the mom is worried about. And I think that touches on a deeper point of the film where a lot of this, I think, is about this mom's past trauma, the mom worrying that her kid is going to turn into maybe the abusive husband that she once had. And I think that's the metaphor this film is trying to weave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to probably touch on that at every turn as we get to different points in the movie that really hammer home that metaphor. But I guess my question point is as you were viewing this for the first time, not after you thought about this and digested it, but like as you were viewing it for the first time, did we feel these scenes were going to be kind of relevant later? Was it something that we felt was inserted correctly at the right time? Anytime I see comedy in a horror movie, I feel like there's an obviously intentional spot for it and reason why, and it's worth discussing. So, Dan and Becky, one of you two, just give me your rundown on that before we move on.
Yeah, well, I really felt it did a lot to set the relationship tone between Chris and his mom and Sarah, because it wasn't just him coming out and cursing that ass face. There was a laugh and a giggle, and the mom with a little bit of an exasperated look, like, are you kidding me? You're really using that word? You can't use something else. And then he cracks a joke and goes with anus face. And, they kind of laugh about it together. And yes, she's correcting him, but I think it's also setting up how close they really are as mother and son. And I think that gets stronger throughout some of the later opening scenes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to keep on driving. And, of course, these light moments are quickly turned into a dark, scary moment that involves the introduction of the creepy old woman in our film. The muttering microphone herself, as the town calls her, Noreen. So, Dan, did you have a jump scare at this moment when we almost slammed into this cloaked figure on the road?
Yeah, I would say a minor jump scare. It was, I guess, really the first one of the movie, so, you're kind of waiting for it, but it was okay. They were kind of setting the tone, things were getting darker as they were driving, and then all of a sudden, boom, she's there. So I think, yeah, in terms of introducing the more on-the-nose horror aspect of it, I do think that it worked.
Yeah. I mean, on the nose horror aspect, I think, is probably a necessity in a lot of film in general, right? You've got to at least have a couple of those moments where you're into the genre or into, however you're doing it. Eric, to that same point, is jump scares necessary in every film? Did you feel it was necessary in this film, or just kind of just a small commentary on jump scares when it comes to horror?
Necessary, no. I think that it can be used effectively, but a lot of the time in horror, I feel that filmmakers use it as kind of a cheap trick. They want people to be scared, and so the jump scare is like the easiest thing to go to, and it can be lazy sometimes. I think that it's much better in horror if you kind of build a more disturbing ambiance, and the atmospheric horror we like to talk about in a lot of A24 films, where they build an atmosphere of horror, and that scares me even more than just kind of randomly place jump scares throughout a film.
That's fair.
So yeah, it's like I don't hate jump scares. They either have to be used sparingly or very, very effectively, and only maybe once or twice in a film.
Yeah. Well, on the back of this intense scene, which seems to be an actual now theme for the film, it flips to another lighthearted scene. We get the dinner scene, which is including a conversation about how Chris doesn't like dust cheese, which I had to think for about a second. I'm like, oh, Parmesan. Dust cheese. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Anyone else heard of dust cheese before in that semblance, or is that a new deal?
Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I enjoyed it, and I immediately knew what he was talking about.
Right,
too,
exactly.
So
I didn't have to think about it too long.
Great.
I was like,
yeah.
Dust cheese. I like
See,
that.
I didn't put it together until just now. I was still wondering what was in that bowl, and you just made a very, I think, important clarification for me.
Yeah.
There you go. Dust cheese is Parmesan cheese.
Cheeto dust.
Blame it on.
And of course,
blame it on the accent.
Yeah, blame it on the. I mean, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
right? That's another point of this film that's definitely heavily accented in certain parts. And we also get the silly 1, 2, 3 make a face at each other game. These two things combined felt pretty intentional to me, like they were put into play for me to pay attention to for a later date. Again, I didn't know anything about this film. I didn't know there was about changelings. I didn't know anything else, but the way that the beats were going, to me at least, it felt like this was a point of notice. Anybody else notice as a glance kind of somehow that you were like, maybe this is relevant later, or was it just kind of, let's just have a random conversation between mother and son? Becky, do you have any thoughts on kind of what I'm laying down there?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said, the focus is on the kid, and that really starts much, much earlier in one of those opening scenes when they're in the fun house, and he makes that monster face in the mirror, and his face all gets distorted. And then that kind of monster idea follows through in the scene you're talking about now, because they have this little inside joke game, right? Because when the 1, 2, 3 monster game comes about, you think that the mom is counting down for the kid to do what she wants him to do, right? Like, okay, you have until 3 to do what I'm asking you to do. But you get to 3 and both of them are in on this joke that we don't know about until we see them make these crazy faces at each other. Right? So the kid becomes very important. Monsters are hinted at from the beginning, but we don't really know what's going on there. We only see the kid's face get really distorted. And then again, it's building their relationship through this scene. They're having a spat at the dinner table about what they're having for dinner, and it's resolved through a fun game. That they don't need communication to be like, this is silly, we don't need to fight about it. We know each other so well. We don't have to talk about it. Let's play our game.
Yep. And knowing each other so well will obviously come into play later into the film, which I think that the writer-director team does a good job of kind of allowing us to develop through that relationship between the mother and the son. So soon after dinner, Chris is talking to his mother about killing a spider. We find out Chris doesn't like spiders, right? Spiders are, maybe he's arachnophobia. It's just not his deal. Chris is seemingly very terrified and wishes his father was still there to take care of the spider because he would kill it. Chris is mad at mom for not killing the spider and lying about the circumstances surrounding Chris's dad. He's angry and runs off into the woods. All right, so this film is obviously trying to tell us something about marital status, or at least Sarah's marital status, and I'm sure there's a commentary about that, about Chris's father, but they never really show it to you on the surface. You have to infer everything. You have to infer about the scar. You have to infer about her story. You have to infer about the idea that she told Chris that he'd be right behind her and never is. Cole, talk to me kind of about the film's attempt to subliminally tell you about her situation without really giving it to you, and how, I guess, the underlying story of abuse is kind of felt throughout the film in general.
I guess I don't know if I want to call it a trope, but it felt like one watching this movie, where it just seemed like it was okay, like a single mother and her kid move out into a strange lands that have, you know, some weird stuff going on, and she's escaping like an abusive husband. They explain it all pretty, I wouldn't say like extremely direct, because they're not just openly saying it, but it's very easy to follow. They paint a very quick and easy picture, and I think they do a good job of just showing you by when she goes to the doctor and he asks about her scar, and, you know, she removes her bangs, which it was funny because when I was watching it with Amanda, Amanda was like, you know, I think that lady would probably look a lot better if she, you know, grew out her bangs or didn't have the bangs, and then you find out why she has the bangs. So
you're like, oh,
I was like, oh, we're the assholes.
Yeah,
now.
yeah, right.
But no, I mean, like, I think it did a good job of, you know, explaining the situation without, you know, really hand holding us a ton. But I don't know. I guess sometimes I feel like I was watching it and everything kind of what I expected was happening, until like there was a little stuff towards the end that I got a little surprised by. But no, I mean, felt like it was what was supposed to happen for this type of horror movie.
Fair enough. Dan, similar question to you. Like, as far as the underlying tones of the abuse in her past, and maybe just what that has done to her, and not relating it to the whole at all yet, but just kind of those underlying tones, especially in this scene with her son. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Cole said, you know, and Eric, you said the word trope as well, you know, earlier, and I did feel a little bit that way, because you had the sort of damsel in distress, you know, or the damsel in PTSD kind of thing, right? And I don't think that they really needed to elaborate much, because those kind of stories, like, while unfortunate, they're well known, right? That kind of story is told a lot. So I don't think that they really needed to set that tone much more than how they did. However, I do think, you know, like Becky mentioned, the son as kind of being the proxy for the husband as the monster takes over Chris. You know, I think there was a lot to be said about that, and sort of her ability to get out of both situations, right? She resolved both situations one way or the other. So I think there's like the strength, you know, aspect going on there too. But overall, it did feel sort of like the same old story, right? Like the mom abused, they're kind of running away, starting the new life, and then bam, there's a giant sinkhole, you know, in the forest. So we've seen it before.
Oh yeah. No, but,
I've not seen
even
holes
like
in the
tongue in
ground.
cheek, we've seen it before. You're right. It did feel super familiar in general from start to
Very
finish, to
much
be honest
so.
with you.
Very much so.
So we've got that. All right, so Sarah chases after Chris and runs into the aforementioned massive sinkhole. We're talking, you know, literally, clearly not man-made, alien-ass, giant monster-looking sinkhole. You might even say it's a hole in the ground. I mean, that's really the most on-the-nose thing about this entire film. Like, come on. Really? Like, here we go. What's the name of it? What are you watching?
Smaller shovel, smaller hole.
Shut up, Eric. Anyway, this is a small aside. I was watching a film review of this on YouTube with the account Foundflix. Pretty good, actually. Massive following. He pointed out a poignant quote from Friedrich Nietzsche that basically says, if you stare into the abyss, the abyss stares back at you. Friedrich, not Frederick. Friedrich. You hear that, folks? I'm uncultured.
Yeah.
I'm going Frederick.
Yeah.
Friedrich. Anyway, so we're talking about staring into the abyss. Clearly, this is a metaphor for something that is unknown, can be frightening. We've already talked about it. This film has a whole lot of metaphors involved, and it's just actually just one metaphor. The giant hole.
A lot of metaphors.
Yeah, it's the metaphor of the giant hole being a big problem in Sarah's life, and she's going to have to figure out how to get
Can I have to deal with it eventually?
Yep,
You know?
and all right, you can't go around it. You gotta go right through it, as we kind of figure out as the film goes on. All right, so the next day, Chris is sad after school. He's not his normal happy self. Something's wrong. And he has a flyer from the talent show. But Chris doesn't really want to make new friends when he's pressed by his mom. I don't know how talent shows make new friends. I thought that was a little odd, but I digress.
They called it a talent show, but it was clearly just like, hey, we're going to put on a bunch of plays with the kids, and you can sign up to be a part of theater, like a theater class
I mean,
or
maybe
club
it's a different
after
version
school.
Americanized talent shows are clearly a solo show of ego boosting instead of a class of everyone singing together.
I'm still waiting for the talent. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, right. Where's the talent?
I can fix that.
Oh my God, he can fix that. All right. So soon we find out kind of about James, Noreen, this crazy lady in the woods, and we start getting a little backstory. You start kind of figuring out some of the pieces of what might be relevant later on. That night, we see Chris is missing from bed. We start getting spooky things like doors slamming around the house. Sarah can't find him. She's all panicky, calling the cops. Chris magically shows up. It's all creepy and off-putting. And it felt all kind of cliche, at least for me, as far as just kind of the horror things that happen in a horror movie. Anybody else want to comment on that? Eric, what do you think?
If you woke up and you found your kid, or couldn't find your kid, sorry, would your first instinct really to just be wandering aimlessly into the woods?
Yeah. I don't
No.
think so.
Yeah.
Why not?
That's so okay. That's a normal thing in horror films, I guess. Is like, don't go over there. Why are you doing that? Why are you going
Don't
like
go in those
over
spooky
there?
woods. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
I
going
gotta
into the
go.
woods in the dark. And when I don't think she actually, I don't remember her actually looking in his room either. But she probably did. But either way.
Yeah, you don't call the cops before you check the room, but
Yeah,
you know.
like I thought, my immediate instinct would be if he's not in the house. Yeah, I would probably call the cops. I would like briefly look outside. I would not go wandering in the woods. But either way, when she calls the cops, and then they don't actually come, but he's just standing right there in the doorway of the bedroom. Yeah, that was a creepy scene. I actually think I like the suspense of it. I think this film does do a good job with building suspense. I'll give it to the film for that for sure. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Anybody else want to comment on slamming of doors in this scene before we kind of get back into the moment of the daytime? Becky, Dan?
Yeah, the number of times that I wrote down creepy door squeak, door slam, door rattle at every turn, it just goes back to it's a very predictable horror film. Okay? But also, throughout these scenes, the music was what was changing the most, and the music was what was driving my suspense, because there were times when we had happy, slow note piano music playing while some of these creepy sounds were happening. And it was a little bit confusing. Am I supposed to be comfortable? Is something bad going to happen? And it added a bit to my suspense there. But I got tired of the doors overall. That kitchen door never stopped creaking.
Yeah.
That is called sound design, everybody. Give it
Yeah.
up for your audio and sound editors.
Let's talk about it right now. Eric, sound design, soundtrack. This is the time where we talk about it. Did you enjoy it? What were your thoughts as far as the sound? Did you have any takeaways?
Sound design I like, for sure. As far as... Whoa. There was... All right, to talk about... There was a motorcycle in the background there. But as far as the soundtrack, I guess it was a very stereotypical horror soundtrack, very kind of creepy on. Yeah, exactly. That didn't stand out to me at all, as opposed to, some of the films we watched last year, like It Follows or even Hereditary. There's different kinds of horror soundtracks. I like when a horror film tries to set itself apart from other horror films. So, but. So, and then when we talk about A24 horror too, usually A24 horror has something a little quirky or different about it too, and this one seemed more like a normal horror film.
Yeah, absolutely. I sometimes wonder, I always often actually wonder why A24 picks up what they do. And having a run of some foreign films, which we've seen, they've picked up some of these other, films from across the pond, and this definitely qualifies as one of those. But for the most part, for my 2 cents, since I usually like to talk on music and soundtracks, I think that the atmospheric horror part was great. They made me feel on edge for a lot of the film, but there was absolutely nothing that stood out as particularly interesting or great about the sound design. It was what it was. It allowed for a perfectly average horror film because it was perfectly average soundtrack. And that's my 2 cents on that. All right, we're going to move on. So after the creepy, off-putting night with the missing child, where clearly something has gone wrong, Sarah decides that she is seeing shit and needs to talk to a doctor. She gets some meds. The doctor looks at the scar and suggests that she should probably just take some time off and chill. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that Chris is probably turned at this point, right? Changeling monster, the night after.
I've seen Supernatural.
Oh, I love that. That's pretty good. That's Among Us soundtrack right there. Yeah. Chris is definitely among us, as they say. He is turned. He is a monster, and we're gonna talk about the changeling. Actually, let's talk about it right now. Changelings are a pretty famous monster in lore, and especially in the Irish world. Did we kind of realize what we were dealing with from a monster history pretty quickly, or was this still just kind of this is weird? Becky, you're nodding. What do you think about changelings?
No, I think for me at least, it was very clear from the beginning. As soon as we saw the hole in the ground, it's really an inverted fairy fort, right? So from the first look, most fairy forts are on hills and above ground, but as the title scene flipped the world upside down, so too is the fairy fort upside down. Okay? And the earth is all moving into it. So for me, there is no doubt in my mind that we're dealing with spiritual woodland creatures. And as soon as Chris's facial features started changing differently, I was like, oh, we got a changeling. But it did give me pause because most changeling stories take place with infants, right? Young infants and babies, and they're kind of swapped in and out. It's not usually at an age where a kid has a distinct personality. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, at least in the stories that I've read, it's all been babies, and you don't figure it out until they hit a certain age where they start killing everybody.
Before it's too late. I love that.
I think that's called puberty.
Oh,
Pretty much.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Cole, you're a familiar guy with these old Norse folk tales and things along the just mystical. What do you think about changelings?
I think they're very interesting. I come from the school of Sam and Dean Winchester, so I'm very familiar with with their lore. I've also seen Christmas Horror Story has a pretty good changeling short
for our guests.
it.
That's a Supernatural reference out there.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I as soon as that night happened and he came back, I was like, okay, so we're dealing with the fairy changeling, and it's very popular in Irish history and all that stuff. And again, we're definitely in Ireland, in the deep country, and all the actors and stuff are from Ireland or Scotland. So it's all very fitting. And again, it's this is not a bad film, but it's a film that when you watch it, you know what you're going to see, you know what you're going to expect. It's not going to change the world or anything like that. And nothing is inherently bad about it, but it's just one of those things where the second something changes, you know instantly what it was and what caused it. There's no mystery behind it, but
we talk about elevated horror.
I do think the ending surprised me.
That's
a
fair.
little bit.
And, but we do talk about elevated horror a lot with A24. That's a big part of what we do here, and this is not one of those. I mean, you could talk about the metaphor. I'm sure you could come way to go with, well, it's a little deeper than on the surface, but it certainly isn't a Hereditary, right? And when you put it up against something like that, it's hard to give it the same lens, even though you're looking at it from that perspective of an A24 horror.
Well, horror fans on Reddit tell me that all horror is elevated, so yeah.
Oh.
I
hear that, Reddit? If you're listening.
Slop on my knob, like corn on the cob. Check in with me and do your job.
All right, so after school, we see a sudden change in Chris. The day before, Chris comes out and he's sullen and downtrodden. Now he's coming out and he's laughing with his friends. And he tells his mom that one of those friends was Stuart, our former anus face. What's going on? Chris is starting to exhibit signs of not being what he seems. On the way home, they run into Noreen again. Now she's wearing a white gown and is standing in the middle of the road. And we get the pretty awesome "That's Not Your Boy" scene. Cole, I want you to talk to me about this one. I thought this was one of my favorite scenes. I think that Noreen just absolutely embodies a crazy person here. It really made me on edge. I loved the headbutt. Just give me a rundown on this scene.
I don't know why our main character Sarah just keeps wanting to get as close to these crazy people as possible, because I feel like I would probably just try and drive around her. Plenty of room to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't
No.
like, hello, hi, lady.
But yeah, I mean, she we kind of had the backstory of she possibly killed her kid and went to a mental institute and all that stuff. So like, she's clearly not okay. And that scene, she like flips a switch when she gets close to that kid and is just like staring at him in the window, and the kid's just kind of stone cold face. And that headbutt was super intense. I did watch the trailer for this, and I will say I liked in the trailer that they changed the color of her blood, at least in the trailer I watched, because when she first smacks her head in the trailer, it's like a gray black blood where you're like, maybe she's the changeling, but then in the movie it's red, and you're like, oh, she's a normal person. So I liked that in the trailer where they kind of tried to trick you.
Okay.
But no, that scene was very intense, very well done, really good. Also the fact that they have I can't remember the guy's name, who he's in Game of Thrones, and
Yes, he is.
he's like the original James Cosmo.
The character's name is Des, though, right?
Des.
Yeah,
Des is
Des.
the character, the husband of Maureen, the dad of James. But
James
yeah, I
Cosmo,
think
yep.
James Cosmo, yep, of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, Braveheart.
Brave.
What kind
Is he
of
in
nerd
Braveheart?
are you?
Just the worst kind. Just confusing.
Oh,
my
Jorah
medieval
Mormont.
things.
Yeah, I
Jorah
remember.
Mormont. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he's awesome, and that was just a good scene, and that headbutt was intense. Like,
Bam.
definitely, you felt the impact on that one. It wasn't. I don't know how they did it, but it did not seem like it was a fake headbutt. It sounded like
People
seemed like she
headbutting it until they bleed out and hurt themselves. That's a little trigger for me. I think
Oh, yeah? Long
Hereditary.
legs.
You know, that's one. I mean, that was really rapid headbutting against a door, or I guess a attic door, and then this movie's horrible, but you all remember The Happening?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Of course.
Marky Mark and the Funky
it's
Bunch
the Funky
fighting
Bunch.
plants.
An old lady headbutts herself to death in there, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree. It's an not maybe overused, but it's
It's a little overused, but like
it's-
it's disturbing though. That's
it's disturbing as hell.
Yeah.
It's sudden. It's out of nowhere,
Mhm.
and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Without holding on to the scene too long, we got to keep moving on here. Chris goes to bed, and everything seems fine. The next morning, Sarah goes to try to talk to Noreen, but guess what? Noreen's dead. Yep, that's right. Her body is buried in the ground with her head in the dirt, and crows just picking her apart. Dan, what do we think about Noreen's untimely demise?
Get in the hole, Murph.
And the fact that we had this body with their head buried and crows picking at a corpse?
Yeah, so I would say probably the most visceral scene of the movie, right? I do think, kind of stereotypical horror, again, as we keep coming back to, but pretty well done.
What's stereotypical about... I thought this was a very original concept, albeit extremely weird.
No, I think the
Burying
crows
people's
picking at a
head in a
dead
hole?
body. Crows picking at a dead body is
Oh
stereotypical.
yeah, but burying people's head in a hole...
Sure.
I almost
That
thought
was
it
an
was a
original
little
take.
comical in a way.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, so that I do agree that was an original take, right?
Yeah.
I did think it made for a funny visual, right?
Yeah.
And it comes back later in the movie, obviously. But I do think it made for a funny visual.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, I think the scene was it accomplished what it needed to. It had that shock value of like, okay, we're entering the next phase of the movie. Like, why is she dead? Okay, we're assuming that Chris had something to do with it, but who knows, right? So yeah, I think it was pretty creepy. I think the crows were a nice touch. So yeah, certainly not earth shattering, but it was fairly well done.
There you go. Yeah, cool.
I was just gonna say, I thought it was again kind of a trope where she like confronts the changeling, is like has that meltdown, headbutts, and then the very next scene is just like she dies all of a sudden. It's like yeah, no shit. Of course she was gonna die, but it was just like so quick, expected, and I think that's where
That was
it kind of
expected. I just think the
lost me.
head in
buried-
the whole thing.
Head in the hole is hilarious, and
Yeah.
also the idea that is how a changeling who is, again, you find out it's very strong, overpowering, can, I don't know. She has like the scene where she breaks the dude's arm, but doesn't really break the dude's arm. But the changeling's like, I'm gonna kill people by digging a hole and putting your face in it and burying it, and you're gonna suffocate.
Right. So here's one thing. Go ahead, Dan.
Couldn't you see like a Criminal Minds episode with like their profiling the changeling and like he always buries his victims' heads in a 4-foot diameter hole.
One thing I didn't put together
He
right
must
away
be an
is
environmentalist.
I didn't really think that Chris was responsible for Noreen's death. Like, oh, she knows I'm a changeling. She just accused me of being not who I am. I'm gonna kill her now. I guess at the time I didn't really put that together at the time, but that was clearly what they were going for, right? Like, she discovered his secret. Now the small child is going to murder
and Chris
her.
looked pissed when she was like, "You're not him. You're not him," and he was just like pissed. He's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you
And
tonight. I'm coming for you." Yeah, and sure enough, you found some spiders, got some food, and killed her.
All right, so Cole kind of referenced this, or Eric did, one of the two. Anyway, we get the cops come around after Noreen's body gets discovered, and in a daydream, it kind of looks like Chris is snapping some wrists. Why are we giving this child with superhuman strength these daydreams? Eric, I just want to talk about the daydreams in general. The use of daydreams when you go from reality to this non-reality and then snap back to it. Is it effective in this film? What do you think about it as a use of film in general, as a escape from reality and just daydreams? Let's talk about it.
I think it can be effective if it's not overused in this film. Yeah, I don't know. I was fine with it. I didn't think it was too overused. I guess we know that this kid's a changeling at this point, but I mean, Sarah obviously is dealing with a lot of trauma. Like she's given sedatives. We forgot to mention that. That was a big thing, is that she was given
after the doctor,
sedatives, and that is kind of a normal, not a normal thing, but like when you're given something by the doctor, you start taking a little too much of it, or then you start dreaming a bit, and I think it was okay in this film. I don't think it was overused. So.
All right, fair enough. Becky, not about the use of the daydreams, but the particular scene itself with the mom observing her son violently snapping the wrist of a police officer. What are we seeing here? What are kind of the progressions that the film is deciding to move towards?
I kind of took it as Sarah seeing the possibilities of what this changing kid could be doing, or like the most evil that she could imagine. And I kind of saw it as her thinking, what if this is what's happening? But she gets so absorbed in it that she thinks that it is real. And it made me question if it was a daydream, if it was like some sort of projection being put into her head to make her feel like she was going crazy. Overall, it felt a little bit disconnected from the general story that was being told. But I do think that it did a lot to show her anxiety ramping up throughout. A later scene, when it comes back pretty strongly, I think is a perfect example of her hyper focus on her kid, how he's changing, and the anxiety that she feels because of that and the unknown.
Absolutely. I think that anytime you can make a reference to maybe some of her past abuse situations or anything that she would have dealt with, you talked about it before, like perhaps there's a metaphor of she's worried her kid is going to take on the same tendencies as her abusive husband. I feel like that's a hyper focus on her part there. All right, so now
Dan has his hand up.
What, Eric?
Dan has his hand up.
Oh, I can't see Dan. Dan, I literally cannot see your hand. So
okay.
Edit that or not, I cannot
that's
see
why.
Dan's hand.
You did that once before.
It's weird. Because it's very big.
Say, I can see.
No, it's my fault. I have my script on one side and you on the other, and you're truncated, so it's my fault. Everyone world?
Stop truncating me.
My fault.
Don't truncate me, bro.
Yes, bro. All right, Dan. I've done this before to you. I apologize. Please go. And use your other hand moving forward.
Fuck you!
Exactly.
I hate your little soundboard most times, but that was perfect. All right, Dan.
That really was.
Go
I
ahead.
got to give it to you. No, I just wanted to add that overall, I feel like the use of those sort of daydreams or those, kind of breakaways from reality. I think it helps move the story along quickly too, because we sort of accomplish two things at the same time. We see Sarah becoming, like Becky said, increasingly hyper-focused on Chris and what's going on. At the same time, we see his like evil growing. So I think it's an easy, quick way to like move the story ahead. That's a very violent scene. It's a very memorable scene. So it sort of helps propel things along quickly and saying, okay, well now she's fully like, she's aware of this. She kind of is starting to understand what's going on. He's clearly descending into pure evil, and now we can go to the next stage.
Right. I think the clarity is really actually important there, because now she, like you just said, is absolutely aware of what's happening. She's on her way to proving it, and that's the reality of it. The scar comes back into play. Now it's bleeding after months of healing, seemingly at random. Sarah starts to be suspicious that Chris, like Dan just referenced, might actually not be her kid. Surprise, surprise. And she talks to her boss about the situation, asking her about her own children and if they ever thought that she was something else. That's a nice little moment of levity, right, where she's talking to somebody that's important for life and trying to get some reference. I don't know if there's any questions in there, but I do like that they took an attempt to make her human again and make it a real-life scenario, and that's pretty cool there. The next scene we want to talk about is Noreen's funeral, right? So we get, I think it's hosted at Noreen's house. There's a bunch of black cloth all over the place.
I thought that was a big funeral, and I thought there was another funeral going on across the way, and then her funeral, there was only Des there.
It's possible. Obviously, we see that Sarah's there too, right? So Sarah decides to come. From what I was reading, it looked kind of like the room was in the house and all of the cloths were over all of the mirrors that Noreen had in the home, because Noreen was convinced that her husband was also a changeling like her son James, and that's why she had mirrors in the house, because mirrors showed the reality of the monster inside. We get a lot of history of the film in a really, really small package, right? We get the background of James with his missing tooth. We get the story of Noreen descending into madness and thinking that her son is a changeling. The story
finally get her job, too. She works at a little store in town.
It's a whole thing,
Yeah.
like literally running down what seemingly murdering her child to stop what she thought was a monster. We get a lot of info dump in a small amount of time. That can be effective in some films. I don't know if it was effective in this film. Cole, what do you think about just in general the idea of an info dump with a whole bunch of backdrop that's supposed to be super relevant for the rest of the film, but you only get it in a 2 or 3 minute period?
I felt like it was redundant at this point.
I agree with you. They already told the exact same story in another previous party.
Yeah, we already knew she had run over and thought she was a changeling, and then obviously the scene where her smashing her head on the door, it felt redundant. And then, I thought Des was going to be a bigger player moving forward, so they did get me on that, because he was not. He, she does the whole secret camera thing, which we never see what she sees on the camera.
Exactly.
But she
show the audience, man.
Yeah, she shows Des, and Des just like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's like, is he a changeling, I guess? Is that what I'm supposed to get out of that? Or is he just so over everyone's bullshit and grieving that he's just like, I just don't care anymore. I'm just over it. I don't know.
I guess I empathize with Des a little bit.
Deal with him anymore.
Right.
He just leaves.
He lost his son, who he clearly loved a lot. They made a pretty good point of that. His wife descended into madness and is a town pariah because of whatever happened. Like, this is a severely traumatized man. And I don't know, the film, like we've kind of talked about, just keeps hitting the nail on the head over and over again, as far as just like beating it into your head on what this film was supposed to be about. And you really get the point almost consistently throughout the entire thing. Eric, do you have anything you want to throw in on any of these scenes with Des and the funeral and kind of the backstory and just the way they not really force feed, but make sure that you know everything before you get to the penultimate and final scenes?
Well, it might be kind of silly, but I was like just wondering, like, her job the whole film, like what, and why this specific town, and like how she afforded this big house too. Which, I mean, they definitely have a better social welfare system in Ireland than over here. So maybe that was how. Des, I actually think, did a good acting job in here. And I actually think the acting was overall pretty decent in this film. And in this scene, it really did come out. And yeah, I guess it does kind of make the metaphor very obvious throughout the film. But I found it to be suspenseful for the most part.
Can we just talk for a minute about Sarah kissing Noreen's dead hand in the casket? Des kissing kissing her hand, because that like I've just looked. Becky and I both just wrote gross in our notes, so that was
Stop touching dead bodies, guys.
I was more concerned why she had a bag in her head, but I kind of had she probably got messed up pretty bad.
Well, yeah, and he explains he wanted it open because she's going to be closed forever. I mean, that was kind of like, okay, I guess that was supposed to be meaningful, but
maybe James didn't have a casket because they never found the body. Oh, well, they ran it over. But anyway, sorry.
Well, and then Des admits that he killed his son as opposed to Noreen in that scene too.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. He tells Sarah that.
Well, but here's the thing, right? So we talked earlier about how there was at least some nuance in the whole assuming that she had been abused and the scar and all of that stuff. And here the film blows up any chance of nuance. Like Kevin kept saying, it's just like, okay, this is exactly what the story is about. Like, here's your, like, if this was the trailer, you wouldn't have to see the movie, right? So yeah, I do feel like aside from the gross hand kiss, that whole scene was just so sort of like, okay, here's the whole synopsis in the movie.
Yeah. All right, we're moving on quickly. So Sarah decides after the funeral, she's like, I'm going for a jog. We're going in the middle of the woods. We're going to start running random. And she's going to find her son's G.I. Joe action doll. You know, it's fine. It's placed out by a log.
It's not a doll. Come on.
Sorry.
Action figure.
Action figure. I said action doll. You can't put those things together. Action figure. G.I. Joe. Anyway, Sarah decides to confront Chris about him going into the woods because she found the action figure. Chris denies it, of course, and then goes all Hulk and basically shoves the table across the room. So now we're starting to see some freaky demon strength. Again, we've seen this in how many action films? Or action. Jeez. I'm talking about action figures. Horror films. How many times we've seen a child with freaky strength? It starts playing into the tropes. Of course, Chris denies leaving the doll in the woods, and we get some pretty cool scenes. I don't know if we need to stay on this too much, but after the Hulk scene, Chris eats the spider. So we are putting these two scenes together where it's clear that Chris is now no longer who he seems. Right? Probably not too much more we need to talk about there, other than I was definitely creeped out with the spider scene. As far as like we get things
that was a
from
good scene.
Adam's
I like
family walking across, her eye peering underneath. I agree. I think it was definitely a creepy scene. Eating spiders is terrible.
Somehow I always feel like those, extending fingers or the reaching arms, the like weird superhuman stretching, it always makes me feel really unsettled in horror films. So like her peering under the door and seeing that, it was a good spooky effect. Maybe my favorite spooky effect of the movie, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That scene definitely was like the best at like setting up the spookiness. And then even when she like steps and you hear the creak and she's like fucking books it back to her bed and you have like the scene of her trying to hide and pretend and hope he doesn't come in. Yeah. I like that scene a lot. That was good.
I mean, and they did such a good job of setting up Chris's fear of spiders in the earlier part of the film that you absolutely, I mean, there was no doubt at this point, but they were very much like, okay, this is a demon child or a replacement or whatever it may be. All right, the next morning, Sarah takes Chris to the doctor because, eating spiders is pretty messed up. So in the long run, it seems like she must take things into her own hands. No one's going to help her. The doctor doesn't care. He's more concerned about her mental health than Chris's health. Nobody's there to help her. It really does feel like the film is trying to set up that she needs to be the one to overcome all of this trauma and all this drama. Back again to the metaphor of our domestic abuse and trauma in general.
This is also, I would say, pretty common thing in horror is that people just don't listen to women. They're just on their own to fix everything. Yeah. That's a very...
And she's going to
do it. Just in horror?
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, you're right.
Well, I'm just saying we're talking about like horror films in general. They are in a lot of other genres too. But in horror, that they use that a lot too, though.
Anybody else notice that someone helped me to, I'm going to handle this myself shift? Or was that just kind of a subtly put in together scenario? I just kind of was wondering if there was anything where we're like, all right, the tone shifted from act 2 to act 3 essentially at that point.
I think it was just kind of like a typical way of saying, basically, fuck it, nobody's going to listen to me because how could they believe me? This is insane. Am I going insane? I need to figure out if I'm going insane. So I think it's less of a like resolve turn to more of a, please tell me I'm not just imagining this and my kid's going through puberty and I'm overthinking it like women do.
Fair enough. Well, the next scene, we get new wallpaper. Eric, did you notice anything about that wallpaper, or anybody else notice?
No, I didn't.
It is oddly familiar to the Overlook Hotel inspiration wallpaper. Dan
noticed.
Yes, so I noticed that, and also the scene, and I don't know if we've quite got there yet, but the scene where they're in the school and they're singing, but then Chris is kind of just talking directly to her. She totally channeled Shelley Duvall there, like her facial expressions, the whole look of it. And we mentioned way back at the beginning too, and I feel like some of the scenes were really reminiscent of the Blair Witch Project, the beginning, setting the scene, going through the woods. I was like, whoa, this is so Blair Witch. So I think there was definitely a lot of allusion or a lot of homage paid to other horror films. So I think that was a good example of it. There was definitely that Shining thing running through there.
Yeah, 100%. And I really think our writer-director team just like we're gonna make that homage for the folks that came before us for sure. So Chris comes down to breakfast, and they kind of have this attempt to be like, oh, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden we get this waking nightmare again, where Chris is ripping open the scar. We get a lot of these jump scares, these situations where daydreams are now intermixed with original scenes, and we've kind of already talked about it enough, but they keep coming back to it, right, as far as a way to connect the supernatural with the reality of our film, and that's pretty wild. Dan just referenced our talent show scene, and I enjoy this scene a lot. So personally, Rattling Bog, for those that don't know, is a traditional Irish folk song from the 1700s. So they sing this song at the talent show, and I've heard a couple of different bluegrass bands cover this song, and it's a song that it's familiar to me from my childhood at singing at different daycare events or whatever, and it's a really creepy scene. It honestly is just wild. We get this idea of Sarah spiraling as she's seeing her son, who she knows at this point is not her son, and the lyrics of the song, and it's just one of those scenes. If you're listening to this podcast and you haven't watched the movie yet, I don't know, why you're listening. You should probably go watch it. But if you've watched it, you know that this scene, at least for me, was fantastic. It was just dark and gritty, and I loved everything about it. And at the end of it, Sarah runs away. She comes to see her son and starts realizing that this is not her. So, Eric, what if your mom told you after a talent show that you weren't her son and ran away like a wild person?
I would be like, you've already told me this before, and I've already ran away. So
it's the same hat, man. Same hat.
Yeah, I mean, that would... I couldn't imagine being in that situation because the kid was already changed at that point. So I would think my mom's going crazy, obviously, if she told me that, and I know I'm not different. Besides, maybe my voice has gotten lower or something, and my balls have finally dropped or something, But,
Cole, what did you think about the talent show scene?
It wasn't a talent show. It was a school play in theater.
The class sing-along scene, sir.
The Rattling Ball talent
show. I think this is where I started to get like a little annoyed with some of the, I don't know, I wouldn't say like plot holes, but just like she straight up abandons her kid, but yet he arrives back at their house like way off in the distance and like no explanation of that. I think I liked when they were singing and he wasn't and like you had like the close-ups, and I thought it was a very good scene. Otherwise, I kind of lost it. I started like, didn't laugh, but I had like a kind of moment where when she's screaming and just like, "You're not my kid," and just like fucking leapt and dipped. It was just like over. So and then from that point on, it started. I'm gonna bring up a little soapbox real quick.
Please, your soapboxes are famous.
Can we talk about how she finds this sinkhole in the back in like the woods? It's massive, like huge sinkhole, never mentions it one time. Just like, did I miss it?
No.
Or does she ever mention it to anyone?
She
No,
doesn't
Like,
tell anyone about it.
if I saw a sinkhole like that, I would be fucking telling everybody. I'd be like, this thing is
You know
crazy,
about the sinkhole
man.
back there?
Like, have you seen this fucking thing?
But here's the thing, could other people see it, or were she and Chris the only ones who could?
I mean, it's middle of nowhere.
she never brought
it
it
seems
up,
like the house
so
is
we
very
would never
desolate
know.
too. So
That's
like,
true, and I mean, it
Yeah.
is a pretty big sinkhole, like, even in the woods. Like, Ireland's not that big of a country, and there are pretty many people, so, like, you would think someone would stumble upon it, you know, at some point.
Although
but
they did a great job of showing the immense woods surrounding the sinkhole, and there was just dense
Yeah.
forest everywhere. So the chance of you, which even makes it actually more unbelievable that she would randomly just stumble upon the sinkhole while running through the woods for no reason whatsoever.
Multiple times. But again, she never
Yeah,
mentions it to
multiple
anyone.
times.
Never
I believe
mentions
there
it
could
to
be a
anybody.
sinkhole like that. Yeah, but like I think you would tell it to other people, and then I actually agree too. I forgot to mention just like how weird it is. She runs away from her child, and nobody is just like,
Yeah,
hey,
everybody's
you
just
ran away
like,
from your
"Oh."
child. You know, like
Ah, she's fine.
Yeah.
Kid'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Chris, I guess I'm giving you a ride home. Come on, buddy.
So as we're mentioning, Chris eventually does get home. And guess what? He's pissed. So he confronts his mother and is like, yo, you won't run away from me again, will you? Because I don't like to be alone. And mom's kind of like, life's not great right now. So Sarah begins to confirm that Chris really isn't Chris by asking him about the aforementioned dust cheese, playing the goofy face game, the things we had referenced in the earlier questions. Yeah, see? It's all coming around
we
now.
finally get confirmation that he's not who he
Right.
says he
Yeah,
was.
even though this is like literally from, and you, it's a great criticism, Nicole, though. You know this from what, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes into the film, and an hour or 45 minutes later, you're still like, yeah, I'm aware this child is not who they
but
say.
realistically, if it was your child, you would want to make 100% sure that it really wasn't your child.
at
Like
this
put
point,
it in her
That's
shoes
fair.
too.
That's
True.
absolutely fair.
But at this point, she straight up abandoned him and yelled
Yeah.
at everybody that you're not my kid. And but
She
then
now
still is
needs to
just
figure
like,
out a way to prove it to other people, though, too. And
Right. And she's
that-
not
you
about
have to
that
bring the
life.
monster out.
And she's
Yeah.
decided at this point no one else is helping her. She's doing this on her own. Well, Chris, guess what? Figures it out. Well, the changeling, not Chris anymore. I'll just call it the changeling. Figures out that the mom is onto her, onto it, tosses her across the room like a rag doll, drags her out into the yard, and buries her head in the ground. Same way as Noreen. Funny, yes. Ineffective. Exactly. Like this is what it felt like.
You're waking the neighbors! No!
Step Brothers. This is a cinematic classic. But that's honestly kind of what it felt like. Noreen wakes up, or not Noreen, our main character. Sarah wakes up, and her head's in the dirt. Blows Bert. Oh, what the hell's going on? Her son's passed out, drags Chris into the basement, is like, all right, gotta figure out what's going on with this demon child. Wahoo. Scene progresses. She uses a mirror, the same mirror that was busted off in the earlier scene where Noreen was standing in the middle of the road. We're going to pull it all together here. And we discover that Chris/demon is really a demon. The mirror is the effective moment. I just want to talk about, in general, Chris's monster strength, his superhuman ability, all of the things that this movie kind of put forward. Were you surprised? Did it feel right in line? It was probably more of what we were talking about. This was just kind of a cliched, boring, whatever film. Let's just talk about the monster and the abilities of Chris before we get to the final piece as he's really starting to be crazy. Dan?
Well, I think it comes back to the word that a lot of us have said, and that's predictable. Like, I think it was exactly what you would expect. If it wasn't like some telekinesis or some sort of mind control, it was going to be the like superhuman strength, right? So it was like the natural way to take like a little kid and possess them with this changeling, or change them into this changeling, right? And give them the superhuman strength. So yeah, I thought it was all kind of what you would expect.
I mean, that's exactly right. Sarah decides that all she has to do is go into this giant hole to get her son back. This film wraps up really quickly. Like, they basically decide that this is the last 15 minutes. Sarah goes into this giant hole we've been talking about. She digs deep and crawls through and eventually gets to this big chamber. She finds a body, and the skeleton has a missing tooth. So everyone knows that that's the child James that was referenced earlier in the film.
Always check the teeth.
Oh my gosh. And if you didn't notice that, well, that's what happened. You're right. That's the dead child. So this thing is an actual real-life thing and not a figment of this lady's imagination. Passing over other skeletons and eventually finds her son. A bunch of changeling monsters start forming and chasing Sarah, and eventually they take her own form before she escapes. End of the film. Hooray. Well, not quite. Penultimate scenes, at least. Let's cover these last couple scenes before we get to the ending. Eric, what did we think about this final descent into the hole, the way they decided to wrap up this film? Did you feel it was satisfying? Just kind of give me your 2 cents on the ending.
Satisfying, yes. I think they actually wrapped it up pretty well. I think that this ending actually was an original part of the film. I definitely think the changeling / kid having supernatural strength might go more along the lines of like cliche horror. But then I did not picture her going into this sinkhole and a bunch of these weird beings being down there. And then the image of her seeing herself holding on to a changeling version of herself before having to bash the hand, and that bit of suspense right there that was held. I actually think that was a very good job by our writer-director. That was actually a creepy scene to me. When she was wandering around in that sinkhole, I was creeped out. And this goes into hollow earth theory, too. And this is one of my favorite conspiracy theories.
Let's hear it.
It's the idea that there is no actual inner or outer core of Earth, and it's actually just hollow.
King Kong, man.
Yeah, and people basically...
So wait. The Earth is both flat and hollow?
No, just hollow. Flat
the
Earthers are way down here. Hollow Earthers are way up here in terms of conspiracy hierarchies. They're way more big brain, for sure. And this is an interesting thing. A lot of people... so the Nazis were actually looking around Argentina... Or no, not Argentina. They were in Argentina. They eventually went to Argentina. They were looking around Antarctica.
Yeah,
and during World War II, because they actually believed that the Earth was hollow and that there was maybe a hole into the center of the Earth in Antarctica. And some conspiracy theorists believe that Hitler actually ended up going into the hollow part of the Earth, and that there's a secret society that lives in this hollow part of the Earth. And I think this film
Lizard people
showed us what that secret society was and what they're doing. And they're slowly changing out people up here and switching everything around. Have you noticed how people are just going batshit insane the last 5 years? It didn't have anything to do with COVID. It was a big changeling and hollow earth conspiracy. And this film shines a big bright light on it.
I'm on it. I think
Wake up, people.
lizards everywhere. All right. Anybody else on the ending of this film before we move on? To
Can
our
we
final
talk about
ratings?
how so she goes into the sinkhole, right? Anyone know how she got out?
She climbed out?
I
And
mean,
out. Yeah.
Maybe it was an elevator.
But when she was going in, there was suction, right? It was like quicksand.
Yeah.
It was pulling her down. So I had exactly the same question, Cole. I was like, so just magically, you just popped out? Is this like a Mario pipe?
Clawed her way out.
yeah. And
She clawed.
to put into reference, we do I do heavy civil and marine construction, and we deal with earthwork and trenching and confined space, and a big rule of thumb is basically a cubic yard of dirt, which is a 3 foot by 3 foot cube, is 2,000 pounds. So she goes in there and just how do you not just get crushed or I don't understand how she got out.
There's an actual
but how the
little
fuck did she get
society
back
down
up?
there.
And where is all the dirt falling to? Is it filling up the hollow? Is the earth not becoming less hollow now?
Well,
is
they've
it just
been living down there for
sucking it
thousands
up?
of years. They know how to keep the dirt out.
Oh,
I don't know.
Lord.
I got pissed because she outran all of the fairies, dragging a small child through a
corpse of
tiny
child.
hole.
Yeah.
And she outran all of the changelings that have superhuman strength, and then somehow clawed out of this underground sanctum. We don't see it. She carries the kid through the woods. She does all of these things. If anything, she's the changeling. She is fucking jacked as shit.
All right.
I don't know.
But Cole, what you're forgetting is that she's already climbed out of the metaphorical hole of her abuse and surviving.
she hasn't.
So she went
by
through
that
that,
scene.
and so yes.
In fact, there is a metaphor about abuse.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. We're there. All right, guys, let's wrap this bad boy up. So she gets out of the hole. Doesn't matter how she gets out of the hole. She gets out of the hole.
Why did
home.
nobody fill it after?
Just you're right. She put a
get some
giant
dirt, fill the
dump
hole,
truck on this.
plug that hole.
Anywho, she gets home and she realizes that the only
You only dig
rational
one hole each day.
the only rational solution is to burn the house to the ground and the changeling
Rational.
locked in the door. We get a pitiful attempt of the monster to be mama or mommy, as the thing says at nauseum during this film, before she lights the sucker on fire and moves on to her new life. She has a new apartment. It's filled with mirrors, in case you didn't notice. So she's never really convinced that her son is actually her son and will probably be as paranoid as Noreen has been. Maybe not to the muttering insanity moment, but she's definitely still going to be affected by this regardless. Chris gets a bike. He rides around. And is it happily ever after? ? Last question before we get to reviews. What did we think about the ending? How did we feel about the way they left it? Let's just talk about it. Becky, you're up first.
I mean, like you said earlier, I think they definitely rushed through the ending, but I mean, any horror story in any form hits that climax and then ends very quickly after, right? So that was to be expected. I think the mirrors, when I was watching it for the first time in her new apartment and seeing the mirrors, I felt more of a sense of validation, more so than mistrust. Right? Like she now knows that these things do exist and she's not going to be caught off guard again. But I certainly, now that you've mentioned it, I certainly see could she take the Noreen path eventually. But I think it's important that she's clearly in a city. Like she's in a multi-floor apartment. You can tell that when they're in it. So she's surrounding herself with a large population, and things like that aren't going to go unnoticed in a large population. So honestly, now I'm a little conflicted about how I feel with the ending, because I never even had the thought of constant distrust in my mind.
Fair enough. Dan, you're up next. What do you think about the ending?
Her having all the mirrors and the blurry face in the picture, like most likely blurry face because the kid was moving and she was taking a picture from far away, right? And the mirrors, right, showing the sort of paranoia. But that's what happened to Noreen, right? That's what happened to Des. So in a way, I think it's like saying that this story of the changeling, it never ends, right? They're always out there. Like, maybe she took care of this one particular infestation, but there's a cycle that's continuing. So that's sort of how I read it.
Fair enough. Cole, what do you think? Ending. Wrap it up.
I thought it was extremely predictable yet again. We all knew it was going to end with like, are they that they lived happily ever after? Or are they? And then whatever. The picture was blurry, but again, the kid's riding his fucking bicycle. You're trying to take a photo from, multiple stories up, and you have all these mirrors everywhere. So I don't know. Like I like the idea that she becomes like Noreen and kind of like paranoid, but I mean, it looked like she got her life together and they were having fun. But the kid was riding his bicycle in a circle, and you know what circles lead to? Holes in the ground.
Oh,
so you just gotta watch out. Yeah, right. I mean, I thought it was fine. Like I did not leave that movie questioning, are they normal people or are they changelings? So
fair enough. All right, Eric, tell me about the ending.
I couldn't think of a better ending. It was definitely a little predictable, but not the hole in the ground and the secret society of fairies and everything. But after that, I enjoyed actually how they left it on a, well, is this real or not? No, and I actually think they were sort of trying to leave it open for a sequel. They definitely could have explored like this, these fairies that live underground even more, and they could have explored these two characters even more. And I think that they were trying to leave it a bit open-ended so that they could even expand on the story, which it never happened. But this director, Lee Cronin, is directing and writing the remake of The Mummy that's supposed to come out in 2026.
Brendan
So will this
Fraser.
be in the same
That's a big
universe?
profile.
We don't know.
Yeah, I was about to say, you better nail that.
So if there was a sequel, would it be called Holier in the Ground?
Yeah, holier.
Or deeper in the ground, maybe.
The holes in the ground, holes.
Multiple holes.
And it's in the same universe as Holes, the book. Yeah.
Smaller shovels, smaller holes.
Smaller shovels, smaller hole. All right, here's my 2 cents in the end before we get to final reviews. It was everything that you all said and more. I do appreciate that they wrap it up in a little bit of a bow, in the sense that we don't get a lot of question. I hate that cliffhanger where you just go super, super obscure. Here, there is a bit of a question whether it truly is happy ever after, or if she's going to have to deal with this idea of constant paranoia. But I do think that the audience is convinced that she's not going to turn into Noreen, as far as she has a bit of a control over what happened. And she has her son back, which Noreen never was able to do because James's body was found in the catacombs. So she clearly never got that resolution like Sarah did. I think, again, I'm just going to echo you guys' points on the clichéness of this film in general, just as far as kind of hitting some of the cliche horror notes and the way that the pacing in general felt. For our listeners, we review these films A through F24. And sometimes E, if you're Eric. I might be the only person who's ever given an E on this podcast.
Cole's given an E before.
Yeah.
Oh, Cole. Well, I'll never do it, but these two will do it. Becky and Dan, you can decide. It doesn't matter. Our audience is going to decide if we want to do that or not.
You're a teacher.
But
you give E's, right?
you give E's. Yeah, you give an E in class, Dan? Have you ever given an E to anyone? Because it doesn't make the A, B, C, D, F without the E.
Never, not once, and honestly, most grading is not A through F anymore anyway.
All right. Well, we're not changing what we did.
Cowards.
A24 on the Rocks results in A, B, C, D, or E.
Do they give number grades now? What's the rating?
What's the world of grading like?
system?
A 4.0 scale.
Okay, so it gets a little complicated. Some schools do a 1 through 4 scale, where a 4 would be within the range of a 90 to 100. A 3 might be in the range of like an 75 to an 89, right? But it's typically a lot more mastery learning, so they either have achieved mastery or they're not there yet.
Okay.
Sounds subjective. But what do I know?
Anyway.
Very.
I'm not a teacher. I'm going to review this film. At the end of it, I didn't really come away saying I liked it. And that's usually my first gut reaction when to reviewing a film, is how I finish it and go, how do I feel? On that one, I was like, it didn't really scare me. It didn't really compel me. It didn't really make me think about anything other than what was in front of me. Child actor, it was fine, but it was almost to the point where it was very obvious from the early part of the film what he was and what he was going to be, and he really didn't change any aspect of that performance for me. I think that the heavy Irish aspect wasn't really apparent, but it was something that between the accent and the scenery and the way the film was put together, you could tell it was, a foreign film. And from my intro, you heard it was Irish and Belgian, and I think Finnish is the other major country that I had mentioned. But my point is that it was a conglomeration of a bunch of different people all putting their ideas put together, which actually made it a better film, I think, in general. I didn't dislike it while watching it. It was a quick 90 minutes, which I and Cole and probably everybody on this podcast loves. 90-minute classics are the way it goes, at least for a film that's as maybe understated or as low-key as this film would be. At the end of the day, I don't know if I'd really recommend it to anyone unless they're, again, doing the A24 completionist arc. It really wasn't that memorable. I'm not a fan of horror in general. I've come a long way since starting this podcast. If I can get through Hereditary, I can pretty get much through anything. And this was not particularly scary. The jump scares were predictable. Kind of the tension was broken super early in the film, and I didn't really get it back throughout the duration. You knew what was going to happen. You knew what was going to be part of it, and it followed that formula from start to finish. So for all those reasons and more, it gets a C- 24 from me. Eric, you're next.
I think this film, although the metaphor I think was obvious, I actually just enjoyed that there was subtext and a metaphor in this film. This is a big debate and conversation amongst horror fans right now. Some horror fans really do not like any subtext or metaphors at all in their horror, and others say like pretty much all films have some kind of subtext, even if you're not trying to make it have subtext. And I just think that most films are better when there is at least a little bit of subtext. So in general, I enjoyed that this film tried to weave a grand metaphor about abuse and anxiety and PTSD. I think it does fall in the middle for me too. I think I might be a little bit higher than Kevin though. And that's because it incorporates the Hollow Earth theory into it, which is one of my favorite conspiracies. Plus it incorporates like old European myth with changelings, which I need to read more about now. I haven't dug into that one yet, but now that's going to be my favorite new project to look into. So I'll give it a solid C, just a little bit higher than Kevin. It falls right in the middle for me. I would suggest it. Well, you've seen it already, but I'm just going to say it out loud. I would probably suggest this to people around Halloween. I think this would be a good like October film. So,
all right,
yeah.
Cole, I want to hear from you next.
Yeah, so I don't think this is like a terrible film or super bad. I think the acting and stuff was all pretty solid. I liked the sound design, especially when when you started to feel like the kid was off and they're just like really like hyper, jacked up the sounds of him eating or doing things and stuff like that. I like that. It was extremely predictable. The idea of changelings, I think, is very cool, and I have yet to see. I feel like I haven't seen like a very good film adaptation of the folklore. I think like the best one I ever saw was again the Christmas Horror Story movie, where it's like a bunch of little short stories in it, and there's one about changeling that's pretty good, but it felt extremely predictable. It is what it is. Like you watch it and you're like, that's not a bad movie, but I don't think too much about it, and I don't think I'll watch it again unless I'm in like a super specific mood. I think there's better ones out there. If someone asked me, what's a good horror movie, I wouldn't say this was one of them, but I wouldn't like tell them not to watch it. I'd be like, yeah, it's fine. Like whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. C's are fine. It's a C minus 8, C minus 24. It's fine.
It's fine. All right, Becky, you're up next. Is it fine or is it better than fine?
I think for me, it depends on what lens you're looking through. If you're looking through the story lens, it's a fine story. They told a good story. It happened. As we've all said, we expected it to happen. But I think if you look through a more craft lens and you take it for, to me, what really felt like a lot of love and skill that went into all parts of the editing of this film, the sound editing, the scene shifts, the clear isolation transitions as the situation got worse and worse. Again, still all predictable things that you are going to see in any kind of suspense film, but I felt like they tied those pieces together very, very well. And so for the artistry and the craft behind it, I think I'd give this film a B minus 24. I would watch it again with the right group of people if they wanted to watch it. I certainly wouldn't say no to it, but I wouldn't seek it out on my own, but I did appreciate the craft behind it.
I love that. Absolutely. All right, Dan, bring us home. What do you think, bud?
All right, so I guess the best way that I could describe it is like a artsy popcorn flick. And I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. I think, like Becky said, I think certain aspects of the lighting and the washed out colors and the fact that the acting was pretty decent. And like Becky, I agree with her. It told an okay story, again, predictable, but a Friday night eating some popcorn, hanging out at home, I definitely wouldn't finish that movie and be all that disappointed. For those reasons, I'm going to go with a C+. I feel like that's pretty much in line with most horror films for me that are a little bit above average.
Well, you heard it here, folks. It's great. No, it's average. It's an average film. We all pretty much gave it that, but I will say it wasn't the worst thing I've ever had. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. If anyone else does not have a comment or a concern, we're going to wrap this bad boy up. I've been Kevin. Thanks everybody for joining. We will see you in the next one. Please like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. All those things. Podcasting has been fun. We'll see you on the next one. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. I love 90s Tales. Give you control.
And Trent Reznor does some serious sound work. Some good soundtracks.
A24.